is mainly focused on myself and Steve today. My good friend Jay is out sick with a cold, along with two children that also have a cold. So, any parents out there are very much aware of how difficult that situation can be. And considering that family is the most important thing in the world, especially to people like us, I think that it's important that he stay behind and take care of his children. But I hope he's watching. Hope he enjoys everything today. He helped put together the entire episode, so his hand is very much in the ink here. So today we're going to be talking about a few things that happened. Happy New Year to everybody that might be watching for the first time, or maybe continuing to watch after this is 10 episodes. We are going to be talking about whoever has the biggest button. I can't tell if it's going to be an innie or an outie. Steve, what do you think? Innie or outie?
I think it's going to be small. Very small.
Well, it's got to be proportional to the hands.
Impossibly small.
It really should be proportional to the hands.
Emotionally hinderingly small.
You know, kind of it makes you think of that meme that goes around where the guy's sweating, he doesn't know which button to push.
Yes.
Or the Ren and Stimpy episode where he just really wants to press the button. Then we'll be talking about some fast food, and some of Trump's favorite foods could possibly be leading to dementia. As some people might mention, it's a bit of a hard accusation to make, of course. However, it is in the news, and some of the things we talk about are the big issues of the week. And his diet is very important. I mean, people made fun of Bill Clinton all the time for his exercise and fast food routines. Even Ronald Reagan loved himself a Big Mac, and we all know what happened to his mental state towards the end of his presidency. We'll be going into a little bit of fire and fury. You know, this is not a song of fire and ice. This is a song of fire, fury, melted sand, and apparently a food-deprived regime. A lot of tweets. A lot of tweets happened in the past couple weeks. The tweets. We'll talk about voter fraud and how it pretty much doesn't exist, but we'll keep talking about it. Black unemployment, as it is referred to, since I'm not really sure is there a PC way to say that? I know Jay would hate me for that one, but is there a PC way to say, or just black unemployment? Do they call it white unemployment or Asian unemployment?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's I
know you don't speak for all black people. I'm just saying.
Who told you that? I thought that I did, but that's a discussion for another day. You know, we'll get there. I'll figure out some kind words to say.
Finally, we'll be talking about Old Man Sessions and his attack on marijuana cigarettes. All right, so let's begin with the first topic today: nuclear holocaust, nuclear weapons. You'll see in the corner there we have a little map of all the countries that.
It's full screen now.
It's true.
I got new tools.
I love new tools. I got new tools for Christmas, though. So this is a map that displays all the countries in the world that we know of. You know, there's probably more countries out there in a different dimension. Flat earthers might suggest there's a whole bunch of other upside down countries on the other side.
Please.
We're not. Don't mention them. Okay. Well, as you can see, Russia and the United States have lots and lots of them. Apparently, Russia has about 6,800 nuclear weapons. To the United States, 6,600. But you know. You never hear Trump going to Putin and talking about how big his button is. So
But that's why he's so nice to Putin.
That is. You got to be nice to Papa, or he'll press the button first.
It's all about the night.
Well, they call it MAD, mutually assured destruction, which is the policy that we have with Russia. If they launch, we all die. But at this point, we assume North Korea has approximately 20, give or take a handful of nuclear weapons, enough enriched uranium to produce a few more. In any case, you really only need like 20 or 30 to destroy the entire planet, so it doesn't really matter. Biggest problem is that, you know, we're in a non-state of détente, so this is not deterrent, this is not keeping North Korea where it is. We are actually encouraging them to continue doing what they're doing. You know, one of the things we talked about in the previous episode was that North Korea is a country that has seen other countries voluntarily give up their nuclear weapons and then either be invaded, sanctioned, or destroyed. You see a country that refuses to give up its nuclear weapons or doesn't even have them and is invaded, embargoed, destroyed, or in some form or fashion, similar to Iraq, Libya. You've got Iran that made a deal with the United States, and then a new president comes along and is able to just kind of throw that out the door just by not recertifying or by saying that they're not following through, or just by I'm not sure what they called it, but you accept the agreement, and then you slap on another sanction right afterwards. I'm not sure what that's called, but that's kind of what we're doing. And then you see countries like South Africa that probably are the only country in the world that had nuclear capability and voluntarily gave it up because it's just not a game you want to play. At this point, I also would like to mention, if anybody that's watching feels like commenting or saying something, please feel free to do so. We'll do everything we can to acknowledge that. One of the biggest issues with nuclear weapons is that they just kill everybody indiscriminately, just burn, destroy.
Yeah, I can't remember who said this. It's not Einstein, but it's the another guy that was one of his colleagues. He said the hardest thing about nuclear weapons is keeping them from going off.
Well, that there is clever. I'm not exactly sure why anybody thinks that it's fun to joke about it. The president seems to think that it's fun to joke about nuclear holocaust. I don't think that he thinks that anything bad will happen to him. I think he just assumes that our nukes will cancel out his nukes or something.
So now, here's the thing. I said it. TM.
You did say it.
But I do feel like this week there was a lot of hoopla about the tweet. And I get it, people were sort of afraid and questioning his mental fitness, which that is a discussion to be had. It's just that we don't really think he's gonna press the button, right? So
nobody thinks anybody's going to do anything. I mean, this is a guy who throws his relatives to dogs and has them assassinated in airports.
I don't mean North Korea. I mean, Trump is not gonna he's not gonna
I think he might actually have forgotten where the button is. It's right on his desk, and he's like, "Where's my button?"
Right, it's under the French fries. But the thing is, the more important thing is that the presidency is just becoming a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's not and this is the thing, the president says something like this and you know not to take him seriously because he's a bit of a clown. And even his supporters was like, I don't think he's really going to go and preemptively blow up North Korea. Nobody believes it.
But at the same time, they wouldn't be that upset if he did. They would find a way to support him.
Sure, there are people that would justify it, absolutely. But again, is that the place we want to be in where what the president says just doesn't matter? Because here's the thing, we get into this kind of fog of war thing where it's the Fire and Fury book, it's the Fire and Fury the tweet version, it is the sloppy
I'm waiting
Steve.
for the TV show.
It's all gonna happen, right? We need the comic book too, and I need action figures, right? But the problem is, if we're in this place where whatever he says doesn't matter, where whatever the White House press secretary says really doesn't matter because you know that everyone's a shill, that just allows for an environment of, this is bigger than him. This allows for an environment for when the next person comes in, keep the show going and we'll just do whatever we want in the background because the conversation is so thoroughly controlled by this nonsense, right? And that is the real travesty here. Not that he's a clown, but that he has turned everything into a circus.
Well, that being true, I mean, you can also look at the difference between when George Bush was president and then, Barack Obama came in right after him. You have this guy that everybody just looks at as this, I hate to say it, but like a dumb cowboy that just, Texas and boots and...
I wish we had Bush.
Don't say that.
That's how bad
Don't
this
say
is.
these things.
No.
But we thought that he was the worst thing to ever happen to America because in our lifetime...
And Trump says, hold my beer.
Trump said, hold my beer. Wow. Yeah, but he doesn't drink, so that's the thing.
That's why we got to hold it.
Well, everybody said that, one of the things when George Bush was elected was people voted for him because they felt like he was the kind of guy they could have a beer with. So
I knew that was wrong-headed at the time. Here's the thing. I don't want to have a beer with my president.
No.
I want him to be smarter and better than me at everything.
I don't want him to get drunk and say,
or
that button looks fun to press.
Right? You shouldn't... The president shouldn't be the kind of person that is, hanging out with the common
Can you
folk.
imagine if the Joint Chiefs went under the desk and just snipped the wire and he's probably pressed the button like 6 or 7 times. They just tell him that he blew up other countries and he just believes them. Fox News is like, well, 13 countries are gone because Trump got rid of them.
Honestly, I was half joking during the election season where it was like, maybe we can just like tell him he's president.
Yeah.
Right? And then have like a responsible person run the country and just let him go on and continue to send tweets and do the rallies. Here's the thing. It's kind of what's happening now.
Well, I mean, he sends a lot of tweets and his supporters send tweets, like this, this is a democracy and he's the president. We need to follow these certain rules. And they say things like that, but they don't realize that, when it comes to things like marijuana legislation or immigration reform or voting, that he's on the side of the minority of everything. That more Americans side with immigration reform. They side with the idea that marijuana should be legalized or at least decriminalized to some extent. They side with, reason, with diplomacy, with peace in general, because most of these people that support him that think we should be going to war with every country that disagrees with us or pulling back all this money that we promised them have never contributed. And if they are soldiers or if they're people that have worked for the government or actually know what they're talking about, then that obviously there's good reasoned people on both sides. And I hate to pull a little Trump quote there, but there are good people on both sides. But there are way too many people completely ignorant on both the left and the right who don't understand what it means to joke with a psychopathic dictator about nuclear war. He starts saying my button's bigger and works better. His button can still wipe out half the United States. I'm sure Trump wouldn't care too much because it would be most of the West Coast, which all pretty much voted against him.
It's just like the text.
I apologize for coughing so much. I got like a tickle in my throat I cannot kick.
Again, I don't think Kim Jong, whatever his name is.
Actually, I think that is his name, Kim Jong.
Right. I don't think he's dumb enough to go and launch a nuclear strike either.
No, but because that's what I'm saying.
So none of them are going to do it.
It's to protect themselves, and they understand that we will not invade them if we have that. And everybody in Korea for the past 3,000 years just believes that they're going to be invaded by someone.
And also, why would they disarm or stop their nuclear proliferation if we saw what is happening with the Iran deal, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so they're complying. Trump just doesn't like it for whatever reason, because Obama did it. Mm-hmm. And we're like, hey, the Americans signed a treaty with us or a deal with us. The next guy doesn't like it. And they gave up their power, and now they're just doing what they want, hitting them with the sanctions anyway. Yeah. So why should I listen to you? Mm-hmm. The best thing for me to do for my own sovereignty is to continue to
honestly,
proliferate these.
Talk about Nikki Haley at the UN, forcing U.S. sovereignty and how important it is that we do things to protect the United States and America first. Why not? Why can't other countries do that? Why can't North Korea say North Korea first, or France say France first? England say England first.
And here's the thing, I understand that argument. And the thing we would always say is because certain nations have not proven to be responsible arbiters of these sort of mass weapons of mass destruction. Now, when you have somebody on Twitter saying, like, my button's bigger than yours, like, it's harder to make that argument. You know what I mean? That we have normal, sane people, responsible people that are running these things. And that, again, that's what we would always say. So,
well, speaking of normal, bringing North Korea back into this. Speaking of normal and sane, we can move on to the next topic, so that we don't drag out too long. Donald Trump is a huge fan of fast food. It's reported that his meals every day consist of approximately 10 Diet Cokes, pizza, Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, just a slew of fast food, things that we have known for the past 10, 15 years in the mainstream as being terrible for our bodies, bad for children, huge for the obesity problem that we have in this country, especially with the youth. One of the other things that people have noted in certain studies.
It's not really tasty once you sort of
after a while. I kicked fast food a while ago, and every once in a while I like a little something, but I can't. I literally got a Big Mac for the last time maybe 4 years ago, and I opened it up and this was just a shriveled meat patty that looked like high school paper towels that had been crumbled up and moistened
Now,
and then
let me
placed in a
ask
bun.
you.
It was absolutely horrible, and these things don't rot, they don't disintegrate, they do not biodegrade. And you're putting that in your body.
Let me ask you a question though. How much of, because I have this like sort of sneaking suspicion that all of this fast food stuff is just marketing for his core audience.
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
when there's no cameras around, he's eating at 5-star restaurants, having lobster and kale and all these other things.
These are actual reports. I mean, some things that even Michael Wolff, who we're going to be talking about later, has put in his book. You know, he eats fast food on a regular basis because he thinks that it's safer for him to have pre-made food because he's afraid of being poisoned.
But how much of that Michael Steele book do you believe?
Michael who?
And Michael Wolff. Michael Steele's another guy. That's the black guy.
Wasn't he the former head of the RNC?
Yes, until they pushed him out.
Yeah, it's because they were jealous of his mustache, I think.
Yes.
Nonetheless, yeah, he whether or not that's true, I mean, every time you do see him, I mean, when you talk to White, I mean, even before the Wolf book came out, people were concerned about how much fast food, how much Diet Coke the guy was drinking. It's stocked up on Air Force One. You see so many pictures of it. Yeah, part of it could be pandering. Part of it could be maybe he's getting money from McDonald's and KFC on the side. Yum Incorporated throwing him a check.
No, it's this idea that he has. I don't like. We're just in this weird place where, sort of, he has come to represent himself as the working man, right? The everyday working red state man, and that's sort of what they eat. And I almost feel like this is just part of his master. That's the one thing he's good at is marketing.
Yeah, actually, I mean that's his number one trait, his number one ability, his acumen in marketing, his ability to sell his name and himself. And, you know, that's why during the campaign he was throwing around Trump steaks and Trump wine and all this stuff, because on top of the fact that he might not have thought he would win, he still wanted to make some money off of it.
You know, I can't remember who wrote this article, but I heard like he ran for president because he had gotten too many hats made. And he figured this would be a way to sell the hats. Well, and then it kind of got out of control.
That could be 1% of the reason why. But, I mean, at the same time, the man was doing everything during the campaign to sell his product and to sell his name on the off shot that maybe
and those hats.
And the hats. But, you know, at this point, he's making money off of it. And he loaned his campaign money. And then when the campaign raised money from donors, they paid him back. So he basically was keeping the money that was being donated to his campaign. You know, this is a man who just finds every way to get money off of someone, doesn't matter who it hurts or who it's taken away from.
Everything Trump does, I don't know if you know those sort of YouTube memes almost where it's like they'll show like a baby or a cat doing something and then they'll play the Dr. Dre gangster music. I just feel like Trump is a gangster. And it's just like everything he does, just picture it with Dr. Dre playing in the background. It works.
I guess it kind of does. I mean, if you put it, it's kind of like the bad lip reading videos everybody seems to like so much. But at the same time, he wants too much to be portrayed as a thug, as a grunt, as a big bullish bear man. You know, that gets things done and can push people around when he's really not. He craps in a golden toilet.
Right. You know, and this. And we said this before. By the way, did we talk last week about his global warming tweet?
Well,
the weather.
That is also part of. I mean, the man is clearly slipping into some sort of mental problem. I mean, he's reportedly repeats the same things over and over and over again. He doesn't sleep regular cycles, bad health, bad diet, doesn't exercise from what anybody understands. Has no grasp or understanding of things like science or climate change or drugs, any words. I mean, during the campaign, he had commented on Monsanto, saying that the people of Iowa, because Ben Carson was up in the polls, that the people of Iowa had too much GMOs in their brains, and because the food they were eating, and somehow that was making them not be able to think properly, because he was below Ben Carson in the polls, and this is the man who's now his Housing and Urban Development Secretary.
Right. But so, I get all that's easy, right? And I think, you know,
I know plenty of people that eat fast food. I know, like, all the time. I know people that go to the gym and then eat fast food right afterwards, and they enjoy it. But when you're 70 years old and you're the president of the United States and you've got a chef that can make you anything you want, and you can eat healthy, because if you die in office, it's bad for the country. Especially if you die saying, from a health concern, especially after saying that Hillary Clinton wasn't fit to be president because of her health. It's ridiculous, because these things are all problems and reasons why things like the 25th Amendment are there, why there's a reason that the president can be removed for inability to conduct his office.
Now, Carlito says reports say that he will repeat the same story 3 times in a small amount of time in the exact same language, further contributing to the narrative that there is mental degradation. But
yeah, that was part of the fire and fury thing as well.
Again, I get not understand that, but I also think that he may understand the power of repetition. And I think he's also sort of tuned into the way a lot of people communicate, which is most people, when they're listening to any speech, or especially a policy speech or a stump speech, they will basically listen for their keywords and wait to clap.
Yeah. No, that's
right?
What he does.
And so
if
what
he notices
does,
getting quiet, he remembers what makes him not quiet.
So, but that's what people do during. This is just what crowds do, right? He understands that people have very short attention spans, and they're getting shorter. And so he is basically sort of taking out the filler and just going to the greatest hits of talking points, and then people will.
He's got a greatest hits album.
Yeah. Greatest hits of words, right?
He's got the best words, the biggest words. He knows all the words. Because
he knows what they're listening for, he kind of goes up there and riffs. And so, again, I think it's very easy to, and I, hate Trump just as much as the next guy, but, what's the bigger picture here? Because Trump won't be around forever, but what systems are in place that have allowed us to get here?
The Electoral College.
Okay. Well, there you
go. Okay. Well, I mean, considering all that information, people are more than welcome to go and look this stuff up themselves. It's not a secret. Especially with the Michael Wolff book that's just been released a couple days early. All Trump could manage was a cease and desist letter. He's very much aware that if he tries to sue Michael Wolff for defamation or anything like that, he would
acknowledging that this is true.
And on top of that, he'd have to show up to court, and he'd have to be deposed. There'd be discovery and all that fun stuff. And my friend Paul actually mentioned that. Yeah, we would hope that he would actually show up and be under oath for something.
Hey, Tamika.
Because Bill Clinton was impeached, for lying under oath about getting a blowjob. So, you can only imagine what he could be impeached for lying to Congress. Then again, it was a Republican Congress that impeached him. Good old Newt Gingrich leading the army.
Good old Newt.
Old Newty, the fighting Newt. As Stephen would say. Next up, Fire and Fury. The real Fire and Fury. The real talk of the week. People are excited about it. It's immediately an Amazon bestseller. It went on sale 4 days early because the cease and desist letter was sent by Trump's attorneys for saying it was defamation. Michael Wolff swears by it. No, he swears by it. He says he's got over 200 interviews, most of which are recorded.
They said, I will cease and desist to stop printing these things.
Yeah, right. They went into overdrive mode as soon as he commented on it, because really the only good thing that this president can do for the economy is tell people not to buy something, and then the stock drops for a second and then immediately pops right back up and people just buy it.
Now, I want to ask a question. How much of this book is sort of Michael Wolff sort of being is this just like straight up journalism, or is this just like another salacious book that we have all been primed to want to hear these things?
I think we sort of take it as he could be a sheep in Wolf's clothing, because he could just be a sheep just like the rest of us, just waiting for the next big news story that we can all talk about and give us something to do. And we all love talking about Trump, whether it's good or bad. You can't deny that the man dominates the news cycle, and that's really what he wants. He wants to be remembered forever. But, if Michael Wolff can back up his claims and I'm sure that if, I got the book, that, there's got to be an appendix or a bibliography or something, his citations. He says he stands by 100% of everything that he wrote in the book. Of course, immediately, the first move of the administration and of Fox News state media is to try and discredit it. It's what they did with Robert Mueller. It's what they do with the Roy Moore accusers. It's what they do with anybody that says that the GOP are anything but God's chosen party.
The other thing,
I'm pretty sure that's what GOP stood for a while, God's own party.
Oh, absolutely, yes. But the funny thing that I found about this book is that there immediately a bunch of people came out like, oh no, it's a complete lie. I totally didn't say that. And then Michael Wolff was like, I got tapes, bitches.
Yeah, I got tapes. Please sue me. I mean, like you said before the show, somebody would start a GoFundMe to pay for his legal fees if the book hasn't already paid for his third house at this point. But things that it claims in there that that lend to the dementia claims and the mental degradation, things that he just completely forgot people, that he didn't recognize friends that he had for years at Mar-a-Lago, that his eating habits, the fact that he is like a small child, that his first reaction to things is to just fire someone.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is that like a mental disorder, or is it just like shithead disease? No, right? Like, could he just be an asshole?
I don't know if the CDC would classify shithead disease as an actual symptom at the moment. Then again, they classified homosexuality as a mental disease for a long time, too. So you can't always trust that kind of stuff. But
also, it does, and again, I have been primed to believe everything that is in this book because it is just confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. Everything in this book, every clip that I've heard from it, I'm like, yep, yes, I believe it. I want more of it. I will buy 3 copies of this book, right? However, do we find it a little weird how like crazy the media is going over this, like how happy they are?
Oh, it's like someone just threw like a horse leg in a swamp of piranhas. I mean, people are they're just attacking every meaty bit they can find until they get down to the bone and realize it was tofu horse or something.
But to me, part of this is sort of how we got to a place where a man like this could get elected in the first place, because books like this and his craziness is, at the end of the day, newsworthy, right? And that is sort of the thing that he took advantage of, the cravenness. I don't know if cravenness is a word, but you know what I'm trying to say. Of the media. These are the same guys that would cover blank podiums, right? Mm-hmm. And so this book is just really just another podium for them to carry so that they can sell some.
The thing that makes this book the most salacious or cravenness of all of them,
it's all a reality show. That's what this is.
It's not only is it a reality show, but this is probably. I mean, it's not. It can't possibly be the first book written about the inside of the White House, but because there is stuff that can actually back it up, because he's writing from the perspective of a person who spent time.
Ooh, girl, did you hear what Steve Bannon said about his boy Trump? Mm-hmm. Throwing so much shade, girl.
Yeah, it's turning the White House gray. The fact is that the man claims that everything is true, that he has recordings, that he has interviews, that he spent approximately 3 hours in total with Trump over the course of the campaign and his presidency. Trump contends he never authorized access to the White House, and Michael Wolff said, I just said it was over the course of the campaign and, in the White House talking to other people that weren't just him. Now, Sarah Sanders, ever the avid defender of the president, unless, if you saw the video, just mashup of all the time she said that she just hasn't talked to the president about an issue, when she does feel like defending the president and saying that she spoke to him,
but that
he wasn't even there, or that he tried
show,
to.
Like, why do we even have that briefing, right? That literally nothing is going to get answered. We go up there to see what she's going to lie
because
about.
They knew that they couldn't just cancel it. They wanted to do that when Spicy was in charge and Scaramucci, but that's why they put Sarah Sanders in there, because Mike Huckabee was like, I can make this done in a nice way, the exact same thing, except everybody will be happy. Yeah, and then you get Sarah Sanders just standing up there, cold face, like a gargoyle.
It's like the
nothing happened, nothing ever did happen, and nothing will.
I didn't speak to him on anything that I don't want to talk about. Exactly. And why are you there if you're not talking to the president? Like, has she met Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, press secretary.
Every time she goes up there, I just think of that jar of piss that was in Batman v Superman, right? Because it's like you can piss in a jar and call it green tea. But you won't fool me. Sorry, it was a terrible movie.
Yeah, I refuse
Sarah
to watch
Huckabee
it.
Sanders is piss in a jar. But go next.
Okay.
What's
Well, I
next?
mean,
What do we got?
so we're talking about the Fire and Fury, and Trump tweets immediately to discredit the whole situation, saying that Steve Bannon, he calls him Sloppy Steve now.
Sloppy Steve.
Ah,
I love it.
just, I mean, that he will never be an adult. Everything has to be a childish, name calling game. I'm surprised he didn't say something about Steve's mom.
It's coming.
He calls him Sloppy Steve, says he cried when he got fired and begged for his job back, even though the original contentions were that he left on his own accord, that he resigned because they were not going the same direction that he thought they were going in the first place, that the alt-right movement had been stopped and boggled down by the GOP.
Can I just read this for a second? Let's go back to the other one. I authorized zero access to the White House, actually turned him down many times for author of phony book. I never spoke to him for book. Full of lies, misrepresentations, and sources that don't exist. Look at this guy's past and watch what happens to him. And Sloppy Steve. Next, this is the good one.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Wolff is a total loser who made up stories in order to sell this really boring, untruthful book. He used Sloppy Steve Bannon, who cried when he got fired and begged for his job. Now Sloppy Steve has been dumped like a dog by almost everyone. Too bad. I'm sorry, that is a 13-year-old.
That is barely a 13-year-old.
I've had those conversations in the 8th grade.
I've overheard those conversations in the 8th grade.
You overheard me.
I probably did. I mean, I cannot believe that the people that follow him actually want to. Look at my president standing up for me. Like, oh, my president's doing everything I want him to do. He's fighting back against these libertards and these, lefties that don't know how to run a country or stand up to Iran, any of that stuff. I mean, this is a child running our country. The man is petulant. That's what people say about him, that he's mentally degraded, that he acts like a child. His first response to any problem is to fire someone.
But that's what I want to ask you. Like, is he running the country?
Is he? Probably. I mean,
no.
He's appointing all these people to do it for him. I mean, it's not like Hitler was a smart guy.
This is what I'm saying. Like, step back.
Do certain things.
Step back and look at the larger picture. Because again, all this is because we're talking about it right now. We spent a half hour talking about it. The news media talks about it 24/7. We're talking about this shit while they are sort of restructuring the Supreme Court with these ultra conservative judges.
Federal appointments of judges.
So we're seeing all of these sort of things going on, and we don't focus on those things that will actually affect our lives. And it's these tweets, but then how do you not talk about it? Because if we're saying that this is okay, then what? Again, I'm worried about what the next president's.
It's literally like acknowledging the elephant in the room. I mean, the Republicans are that elephant. We have to acknowledge them, because if not, then it'll be not distracted anymore by our talking to it, and it'll just destroy our house. I think most Republicans understand.
Hey, Aquila, how are you?
Most Republicans, I think, understand that 2018 is definitely not going to be a good year. If they maintain any kind of majority, it'll be a vicious fight for it. But we can roll into the next couple of tweets there where we're talking about. Okay, so he's saying zero access. Steve Bannon cried a couple of weeks ago. He said that Bannon had nothing to do with his presidency. That he came on afterwards and he was just there trying to leak stuff to the media to make himself seem more important.
When Steve Bannon first left, what did he say? He said, "I want to thank Steve Bannon for his service. He came to the campaign during my run against crooked Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. Thanks, S."
He even had a cute little nickname for him, just S.
Yeah.
Next tweet.
Steve Bannon will be a tough and smart new voice at Breitbart News.
New voice,
maybe even better than before. Fake news needs the competition.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it doesn't seem to even remember the things that he's tweeted. I mean, he said about this man.
That doesn't matter. Like we know that the jobs numbers when they were 200,000 a month for
Obama, yeah.
God knows how long, and now we get 100,000.
They call those modest gains, and
right, 100,000 is like Jesus came back.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't.
Jesus
by
came
the way,
back, gave everybody a job.
By the way, those numbers were fake until the day he took office, and then look at the jobs numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the craziest thing, because Sean Spicer was like, if you didn't believe him before, he believes him now.
Oh, spicy.
But
I'm surprised he wasn't picked up by McCormick afterwards.
Hey,
it's true.
I see what you did there.
He saw what I did because he could be spicy.
What do we got next?
Next up, despite the fact that the president insists that Steve Bannon's a terrible person and he knows everything, he's got the best words, and he only lost the election because 3 million people voted legally. Ironically enough, 3 million people is the number he lost by, and that just happened to be the exact number of illegal people that voted, according to Trump. So he forms the Voter Fraud Commission, headed up by good old Mike Pence.
And speaking
Mr. Wonderful himself. And just recently, that commission was dissolved. They cite
Mike Pence, the author of the Mutant Registration Act.
Indeed, we should keep making sure people remember that, because it's true. He did do that. He shuts down the commission because he thinks that maybe he doesn't even think this. Maybe he just completely forgot he had started
because it was bullshit.
Well, of course.
And we spent millions of tax dollars doing it just because we needed to protect this small man's ego.
Mm-hmm. That's why they spent $250,000 sending Mike Pence to a game he knew people were going to take a knee at and then leave. $250,000 in security and whatnot, even though he had scheduled that same day for meetings only an hour after he planned this stupid stunt. So I think, honestly, he just forgot that he made the commission, and Mike Pence was like, hey, are we still doing this? I mean, kind of need some help over here. And Trump was like, what? Oh, sorry, Mikey.
Oh, that's bullshit. It's not in the news cycle anymore.
Exactly.
So let's
and at the same time, 40 states basically denied any kind of access that wasn't already available, and you'd still have to go and apply for the access the same as anybody else could.
Come to the state capitol, file a form. Wanted to sort of any like websites that were sort of anti-Trump, they wanted like records from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the beginning of a totalitarian state if it was actually seated in America.
It's not fascist at all.
No, America.
Luckily, it's not fascist, but it's like fascist adjacent.
It's parallel to fascism, I would say. It's just a step or two on the next street up, you know. Next, after voter fraud was discussed and dissolved because states weren't giving into it.
Guess what?
What?
Black people got jobs.
Black people got jobs? Oh my goodness. How is that even possible? Because Obama's not president anymore, so like how are they ahead of anything?
I'll tell you why. Because the greatest job creating president. How did that quote go? He's the greatest president for creating jobs that God ever made.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently he's very happy about this. So African American unemployment fell to 6.8%. He says it's the lowest in 45 years. And he is so happy about this news because, you know, the blacks are working now. And in the Washington Post, of all places, the headline states Trump's first year of jobs numbers were very, very good. So tell me about this chart.
So not to mention the fact they say 6.8% unemployment for African Americans when the average is 4.1% for America as a whole. Does not include people who have left the job market, does not include people who just stopped looking or people that have been unemployed chronically over 2 or 3 years. That being thrown out on the side, if you look at this chart, I mean, this is the chart that they released that the GOP put up proving that somehow Trump is the reason for this. I mean, just look at it. It spikes every time there's a Republican in office. Every time you talk about the 80s with Reagan.
So African American employment goes up when there's a Republican.
According to this chart, the correlation would suggest that during a Republican administration, in the beginning of it starts the roller coaster ride up to a massive unemployment with Reagan. When they did massive tax cuts, unemployment skyrocketed. I mean, the recession of 87.
Now, I wanna target it on something. So we can look in 2008. There was a spike up until around 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Now we see that spike because and
the Great Recession caused by the Bush years.
And that recession affected people of color disproportionately to the rest of the country, and the unemployment numbers but the unemployment numbers were high all around, but it was higher in the Black and African American communities. But if you look, what it's doing is trending downward, right? So from 2011, or 2012, it's steadily been going down. We're on that same trajectory, and it's a lot of this is like sort of taking credit for the policies that were put in place during, the last
look at
5 years.
The biggest dip in there goes from 92 to 2000 when Bill Clinton took over. Unemployment around 15% for African Americans, and it dropped to almost 5%, almost to the level where it is right now under Bill Clinton. And then as soon as George Bush takes office, bam, goes right back up right after 9/11, hits in 2004, goes down just a little bit. I mean, they all have like this little millimeter of a dip after an election year. But for the most part, Reagan, Bush 2, all had terrible times keeping African Americans employed, and they all started off with a nice little tick at first. We're talking about the first year of Obama's presidency. We're talking about the budget has only been, we're talking about the first year of the Trump presidency, and that the budget has been his, quote unquote, since October 1.
Right.
And everything prior to that was Obama's budget, and the administration prior to that, and the Congress that even though they were obstructing everything he tried to do, still put into place prior to Donald Trump, and he's taking credit for everything that's happened, just like he's trying to take credit for zero airline deaths.
By the way, all of these policies that have led to this economy we have, those are the same ones that he was bashing and is tearing apart every day, right? So, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's the first year, the first couple months of his really being in the president, under the responsibility of the budget and everything that's happened. So I'm worried to see what that chart is going to look like at the end of this year, especially going into a midterm election.
I want to be clear here. I am hoping the trend continues, and this is the one area where if he gets credit for it, whatever, I hope this trend continues and he succeeds in this light. If he is to get any credit for this anyway, we'll see what happens. So I don't want it to be one of those things where I'm like I'm predicting for Bitcoin to crash just so I can get in and buy something. I can say I was right. This is not one of those things that I would like to be right about.
No, well, honestly, I don't even think that it would be right to give him credit for this too, and that's why I say the Obama administration's policies, the Congress, despite their obstruction of their policies. This isn't one person or one president's responsibility or their victory or the reward. These are things that were done by the work of hundreds of people, by businesses, and we're talking about during the Obama presidency when the taxes were what they were, for a while, when the ACA came into effect. Excuse me. Unemployment was dropping. So we saw that.
Did Jay get you sick?
I've just been trying to fight this off for a while now. I don't like to take too much by way of medicine. But, I mean, these are the unemployment numbers, the economy's numbers, the growth numbers, the GDP growth. All these things have to do with how businesses are doing, how consumers are spending their money, how we people are doing things. When you get things like $1 trillion in college loan debt, topping consumer credit debt, these are not good for the economy, and none of these things are addressed under the new tax bill. None of these things are tweeted by Trump. He tweets about nuclear buttons and sandwiches, but he won't tweet about the fact that there's $1 trillion in student debt, and he's letting Betsy DeVos give away the rest of the money to the lenders.
But we do need to say that the jobs market is good right now. Right?
Yes, now it is doing well.
Also,
but you got Root. You got like 7 or 8 different companies have just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. You've got Payless. You got all these teenager clothing stores. Anyway. No, that's the thing. They were posting in the black, but they decided to file for bankruptcy protection ahead of time because they thought that they are predicting the economy to dip.
Also, you know that like because of this new tax law, like at least I can say that Microsoft and Citi are going to be hit with about $20 billion in like fees related to this, whether it is like tax payments or whatever, just for the way certain things are structured. So,
well, they're also going to be repatriating a lot of their money, which that's something I've always been in favor of, a low tax for repatriation. Yeah, but again, bring the money back. You don't need to hit 35%.
What are we doing with the money when we bring it back? But again, that's a discussion for another day. But what I'm saying is we are a year into this shit show, and the economy has not tanked yet.
Now, it has not tanked yet because nothing had been done until recently.
And again, look, Bush enjoyed some good economic growth in the early days of his presidency.
Because of Bill Clinton.
Yes. So
Trump will enjoy maybe a year or two because of Obama.
I'm just saying at some point, at what point do we say, okay, this guy was good for the economy or jobs? Now, I don't agree with that statement, but at some point we have to say...
at least halfway through a person's term.
So we'll if this.
Do you say that you're a good student before you take your first midterm?
I do. I don't know what you're talking about.
If you haven't taken your first midterm, then you can't really judge
it's
how
about what's in
your
heart, Joe.
Yeah, apparently it's Big
Don't
Mac's,
judge me by test scores.
It's Big Mac and Diet Coke in his heart.
But now I want to. So we're doing this show today, January 6th, 2018. So January 6th,
I would say by this time next year,
2019, if the market is still good, we'll say, you know what?
Yeah.
He didn't fuck it up.
I would say yes. You know what? He didn't fuck it up, but at the same time, he's going to take 100% of the credit for it if it happens. And if it goes down, he's going to say, nobody listened to me, they didn't do what I wanted, and that's why
Doesn't
they
matter. We will absolutely blame him. But I want to have that on record. We're saying
he
let's
will be
look
blamed
at it in a year.
for it, good or bad. Yes. Nonetheless, he is not the type of person that is going to let other people take credit for things where credit is due. He refuses to do that. You know, he acknowledged people like Steve Bannon being great for his campaign, and then immediately, as soon as something goes south, he says he cried and begged for his job. I mean, this is a child. He's a man-child, and I can't believe that this person is the one everybody looks at and is like, oh, that's your leader? Like, if this was a tribe...
No, you travel now and you tell people, like, oh, I'm from America, and they're like, oh, that's too bad.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm so sad for you.
All right, what do we got next?
Old Man Sessions. Alabama strong. Replaced.
Sessions.
He was placed into the Attorney General position because, for one, Donald Trump thought he would not recuse himself for the Russia investigation, which he did. And for two, he thought that the safest place you can take a senator from is a state which a Democrat could never win.
Right. Unless you're running against a child molester.
But
that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about his plan
Old Man
to lock
Sessions
people up.
Cole memo. So the James M. Cole, I believe his name was a deputy attorney general under Barack Obama. During his second term, the federal government issued clarifications and guidelines on how the federal government would respond to states that were legalizing marijuana outside of medical purposes. So the memo was written on August 29th, 2013 and announced publicly in 2014. And basically it was exercising executive or prosecutorial discretion where despite the president is the head of the executive branch and is charged in the Constitution with faithfully executing all the laws of the United States. But considering that would make 98% of citizens criminals for some reason or another because there's so many laws on the books, you have to use basically selective prosecution to go after certain things. So you go after the big dogs, the ones that are trafficking and laundering.
So they were going after essentially like
so these are the
violent
the ones that are actually causing harm to the nation, which that's what we should be fighting. So these were the 9 points that they said that they would defer to states. If a state legalized marijuana, then the Justice Department would not be allowed to spend money in pursuit of punishing people for following state laws as long as the state laws follow these 9 points. Preventing the distribution of marijuana to minors. Preventing revenue from the sale of marijuana from going to criminal enterprises, gangs, and cartels. Preventing the diversion of marijuana from states where it is legal under state law in some form to other states where it is not. Preventing state-authorized marijuana activity from being used as a cover or a pretext for trafficking of other illegal drugs or other illegal activity. Preventing violence in the use of firearms in the cultivation and distribution of marijuana. Preventing drugged driving and exacerbation of other adverse public health consequences associated with marijuana use. Preventing the growing of marijuana on public lands and the attendant public safety and environmental dangers posed by marijuana production on public lands. And finally, preventing marijuana possession or use on federal property. Things like federal parks, places that the federal government owns. So as long as state laws were able to be construed in a way that strictly made sure that these 9 points were adhered to. The federal government would not mess with you.
Right.
And now, Attorney General Jeff Sessions decided to rescind that memo calling the guidelines unnecessary, and that Sarah Sanders and Sessions and Trump, according to them, said that they will be following all federal laws. Yeah, all the federal laws are going to get followed. All the federal laws are going to get followed, unless they apply to him or his children or anybody.
Yes, not emoluments. No. We're not.
So basically, that it was rescinded because Jeff Sessions wants to appear to be tough on drugs, but he's not going after cocaine. He's not going after opioids.
Let's be clear about what this is, right?
He owns private stakes in prisons.
This is not about being tough on crime.
No, absolutely.
Right? This is a guy who was deemed too racist in the 80s to run for the job that he had. That takes some work, right?
Now, it could only be worse if you said he was too racist in the 50s.
He may have been. But this is what's happening here, right? The war on drugs did not work. What if you are arresting?
It made things worse, just like Prohibition did.
Common drug dealers, right, on the corner, right? You're not addressing the real problem, right? That's like going outside in the rain with a mop, trying to clean the floor.
You saw that thing I posted?
Yes. So that's what this is. Like, he wants to put black people in jail. That's what this is about.
Yeah, and poor white people who can't support his campaigns.
No, I think that this will disproportionately affect black
absolutely.
people.
Even just like recessions do. This is him knowing
marijuana use is proportional. It will disproportionately affect people of color.
Absolutely.
That is what's going to happen. This is an excuse to throw people in jail, which, like you said, he happens to have stock in these privately owned prisons that have mandatory minimum occupancy rates, right?
And they get a credit from the state for maintaining that.
Right, and this is a way, because of the way our penal system is set up.
No, you said penal.
Because these people are going to be working in prison for no money.
That's who was putting out the California wildfires.
Right.
Prisoners.
So, again, this is just I'm sorry, it's a way to bring back, like, slavery.
It's basically because he can't be Jim Crow anymore, so now I'm James Crow. That's basically what Jeff Sessions wants to be. He wants to be this guy that put people behind bars just for the numbers. He wants to see the numbers, and that's all he cares about. He doesn't care
put people of color behind.
He wants to get rid of the marijuana cigarettes. He thinks that they will turn you into a violent rapist murderer because his favorite movie is probably the early 1900s version of Reefer Madness, which was a movie put out and sponsored by the federal government that suggested that marijuana would turn youth into depraved, violent, overly sexualized rapists and murderers and drug abusers and pushers that would just destroy communities. Just absolutely, they call it the devil's lettuce. I mean, this movie came out to scare parents into thinking that their kids were about to kill themselves, and to make sure that they took them to church, and to make sure that they would never allow this to be something that became as popular or as commonplace as alcohol did, because they realized prohibition didn't work. Just making something straight up illegal doesn't work. But if you can get onto the media, if you can get to that pulpit, if you can get those evangelical preachers to start telling people that this is wrong, that's the devil's work, then of course people are going to start following. Oh my goodness, no, you must be right because my preacher said it, or my mayor said it, or my principal said it.
And then we'll go and drink whiskey.
And then we'll go and drink whiskey and beat our wives and deny black people the right to vote for 50 years. One of the things that I loved was in 2005, a musical was made starring people like Anna Gasteyer, Alan Cummings, very well-known people, and they did a musical version of the original movie of Reefer Madness, and they didn't change any words. They changed no words of the script. And they made a parody of it, and if you watch it, you really get how ridiculous this kind of a movie was, but how many people just believed it, because at the time, like Fire and Fury, it was what people wanted to see. They wanted to be scared, and they wanted to have a reason to go after things like marijuana, which were not causing as much.
Yeah,
I mean, if you think what marijuana was like 100 years ago, it was nothing like the stuff they got today.
It is an excuse to criminalize people, fill corporate prisons, and get free labor. That's what this is. And Jeff Sessions has a worldview that people of color need to be under control. Right?
And, yeah, people of
by
color,
this system.
And people that aren't in their fancy boarding schools and whatnot, and that they didn't have the exact lifestyle that he had growing up. But I mean, for God's sakes, we've had George Bush who admitted to using cocaine when he was younger, and drunk driving and stuff like that. I mean, we've got presidents who've admitted to smoking marijuana, and now all of a sudden it's. And
here's the funniest thing.
There's a funny part to this.
This is the same sort of administration that has labeled the opioid crisis a national emergency. So when
and yet they're going full steam after marijuana,
right? So the people in the red states are using heroin and shit like that, and we need to show compassion because again,
it's white people dying,
poor white people, but weed, no. We got to lock them up. They're criminals.
Yeah, and considering that more than half of the country has legalized it, and more than half of the country supports federal decriminalization, they have to go after it because they're losing the ground. What would be a combination of the word lemming and elephant?
Lemifant?
Yeah, I guess a lemifant. Because then that's basically what they're doing. You know, one jumps off the cliff and they're just all falling behind. They don't realize that this is going to cause way more harm than it is going to be to good, but they personally will benefit from it, just like Bob Corker flipping his vote because he got a nice little $2 million tax write-off. These people are doing things for their own personal good. They are not looking out for the country. They're not looking out for the general welfare or for the union in every aspect. They're doing things for their own benefit. And it's terrible because these are people who did swear an oath to protect the country, to protect the Constitution, and times have changed. You know, there was a reason why Prohibition didn't last that long, but somehow, because Reagan thought we needed to have a war on drugs, they just think that that's all that they live for. They live for God and fighting drugs, and for conservatism and making sure immigrants don't get into the country. And now they're saying that they're going to let the government basically not have a funding bill because Trump says, no DACA without a wall that he promised Mexico was going to pay for, that now he wants money to start building to have any kind of a compromise on DACA. And then when Jeff Sessions rescinded this memo, you've got Republican senators, you got Republican representatives from places like Colorado and California saying, we're not gonna hear your appointments if you let Jeff Sessions do this. We will block Republican nominations
because they realize they're making money from this, and now those senators are probably
$1 billion in tax revenue in California alone.
They probably have investments in this legalized marijuana. Yeah. So
the stock dipped 14% over the course of the week.
Of course it did. How can you have a business model where the federal government is saying what you're doing is illegal, and we are now going?
Well, think about that. It only dipped 14% when they're saying that they're going to come after everybody. I mean, it shows that they are sure that their states are looking out for them.
Here's the thing. You're the fucking party of states' rights.
Mm-hmm. This supposed to be a party. Trump even said that, but while he was campaigning, that he believed that this was a states issue and the federal government should not get involved. But he can't put his foot on Jeff Sessions because he knows that if he does, then Jeff just will... Yeah, because Rod Rosenstein works right under Jeff. You could fire Jeff, absolutely, and then replace him with a new one who could then tell Rod, you're not in charge anymore.
And I think this was our last topic, and this is sort of the last thing I want to say, and then obviously add whatever you want. When I'm saying sort of step back and look at the larger picture of what's happening here, this is a shit show, and the country's being run by clowns, right? However, understanding that even if the next president comes in and saves the day, the white hat or the white knight, I don't even like the term white, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So essentially this administration is erasing what the last administration did. The next administration will erase what this administration did. We are running in place, right? So every 8 years we're just on this treadmill, right? Meanwhile, these other nations like China, I don't know how to classify Russia, but sort of they're on this sort of 100-year plan to progress and move forward. Meanwhile, we're just erasing whatever the last administration
We're trying
did.
to, we got our foot on the pedal while the car's in neutral.
So, what does that say for the long-term development and progress of the country?
Well,
we're not building off what the last person did or the last set of people did. We're erasing. And then again, the next president that's going to come in here, the next administration, the next attorney general, right? They're all going to have to undo this stuff.
I understand that too, and something that Jason had just said, not all these clowns are, everything these clowns are doing is bad. And that's true. Not everything that they're doing is bad. There are plenty of them that understand that we are in the same exact situation that we've just mentioned, but that the tide is not in their favor. It's like swimming against a riptide. Like, even if you are doing the right thing, swimming towards the shore, you're still not going to get any closer because there are so many aspects out there that are pushing you back, that are holding excuse me, that are holding, Republicans' original agenda of, strong national defense, conservatism and stuff like that. They're holding that kind of stuff back because the person that's in charge, the person carrying their standard, is telling them, no, that's not how we're going to go forward. And you either have to choose, do you go against your flag or your country, or do you go against the person who is supposed to be in charge of your party, or do you just follow your heart and do what you think is right? And that's why you get so many people either resigning from office or resigning from the administration, or in general to just give up. They give up hope, or they join, another group or a party and say that they're going to run against someone. The best thing that's happened about Donald Trump is he has sparked the idea of the unified democracy in America, people getting together and either voting or starting a podcast or writing a blog or calling their senators, or, I don't know, drunk dialing their representative and leaving a message. I mean, it has formed so much activism. So many people have gotten off their couches and gotten out there and started doing something, whether it's in support of the president or in protest of the president. Whoa. They've gotten up and they've started doing something. I've got friends that have never been politically active once in their life. Just like there were people that had never been politically active until Obama became president, there are people who had never been active until Donald Trump became president or started running for president, and I applaud them. I applaud them for actually getting up and doing something instead of just sitting back and complaining, but follow through. Hold your candidate accountable, just like we said in an episode or two ago, where if Democrats do not follow through with their policies and their plans and holding people accountable, then vote them out of office. Get rid of the liars. Doesn't matter what party you are. Get rid of the people who aren't doing their job properly.
Also, I just think that, no...
So thank you for the comment, Jason.
Not everything is bad, but, this problem is bigger than Trump, right? Mm-hmm. It's bigger than the people that are around him, and I just think that the conversation has changed, right? So how can we get to have normal discussions when you have, tweets about whose penis is bigger, because that's what that button shit was about, right? When we're having these other conversations about sloppy Steve, although that's a good hashtag, you know what I mean? If there's all of this childishness that's happening right in front of us, and so how can you get to focus on, well, this thing may be good or that thing may be good? And I get it. It's very easy to say, to be the we hate Trump show, but
it's what's in the news,
Yeah.
It's a dominating cycle, and you try to find some other stuff, and almost everything has been touched by his.
The conversation has changed. How do you his tiny hands?
Well, I mean,
tiny hands.
Something that I'd gotten after watching
tiny.
Dave Chappelle, and I know a lot of people find that a little controversial at the moment, Dave Chappelle's stand-up, because the last two episodes I watched them on Netflix, and I didn't really laugh at all, but I enjoyed watching them, and I enjoyed some of the things he had to say.
I laughed, and they were hilarious.
His stand-up, the first ones on Netflix, I thought were hilarious, and his earlier stuff was obviously way funnier, but now he's just gotten to talking and addressing things and finding some humor in them. But some of the things he had mentioned really made me think. I mean, a lasting peace is not made in fear. You don't make peace in fear. It just gets better for a time, and then when the bad guys stop being afraid, it gets back to being worse than it was before. It's what people are talking about with the Me Too movement. If you keep going after individuals, and you don't go after the system, and you don't go after the rules and the things that allow these things to propagate, then you are going to end up in the same place you were, only this time you're going to have people that look at you as an enemy rather than someone who tried to find equality. That's why people hated Martin Luther King at the time, because they thought that he was stirring things up. The FBI wanted him dead, because and someone eventually did kill him because they thought that he was trying to upset the way that life was, and he did succeed in upending the way things were, but at what cost? They found different ways to do it. They may have gotten black people the right to vote, and may have gotten some segregation out of the world in America, but at the same time, afterwards, you get things like recessions, you get these ghettos, you get these places where African Americans are so deprived of access to any kind of good, solid future and then they get blamed for being lazy. And then at the same time, you come to now where the unemployment rate's dropped, and all of a sudden, it's the best thing that's happened since sliced bread and the Beatles. It's never been about let's fix the system and make sure this doesn't keep happening. It's always been about who gets the responsibility, who's at fault, who do we blame now for taking this away from us because I don't want to live this way. And then you get people that shoot Martin Luther King or that shoot John Kennedy.
20 years later, Michael Jackson is moonwalking, something, Obama.
You're supposed to, another thing that he had said too that I liked was that you forgive the weak and you support the strong. He didn't care that people voted for Donald Trump, and I don't care that people voted for Donald Trump because that was their right, and voting is a good thing in a democracy, especially when there are two sides to a coin, when there are two options or three options. But you forgive the people that were weak, but you also have to support the ones who are strong enough to stand up and say, no, this isn't the way we're supposed to be going. And, support those voices that say, like, you can't just ignore the things that are wrong. You can't just ignore that Jeff Sessions owns stock in private prisons and at the same time wants to go after marijuana where it's legal in more than half the country, including the capital, including Washington, D.C.
Also, I just think that it's not about whether you voted for Trump or not, right? That's not my problem, right? I just find I get very weird and strange about this, that there is this sort of like knee-jerk reaction for people to pretend that this is all normal and fine, right? And so it's so many people are bending over backwards to find a legitimate reason for why Trump said what he says, trying to sort of make sense of nonsense, right? Whereas it's just like he's given the benefit of the doubt. Whereas if we go back to Obama was inexperienced. Obama was self-absorbed.
He liked arugula.
Right, and it's all these things. So it's like the presumption of innocence versus the presumption of guilt, right? And so Obama was just like, okay, he'll have to prove these things. And with Trump, those same people are trying to just find ways to twist themselves back and forth to say, oh, no, this is okay. He probably meant this, or he probably meant that. And it's like, it's hard not to see better because that it's hard not to see that in a disheartening light.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of people just don't want to ever,
most generous way I can put it.
Ever feel like they did anything wrong, and to admit it means to admit that the whole time you've been doing something wrong, and that's a feeling you don't like because it sinks in your heart, it sinks in your stomach. It's like when you remember something you did 10, 15 years ago, and you just get that sinking feeling like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I
never get that feeling.
Yeah,
I own it all.
Well, I mean, one last thing that I wanted to bring up that I had gotten from the Dave Chappelle stand-up, I don't know if it was
should have got a Chappelle graphic for this.
A talkie or whatever, was that people will be so grateful that you fixed them that they forget that you were the one that beat them in the first place.
Yes, Stockholm Syndrome.
Not Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome is different. That's that rich chick that decided to join that anarchist. Patty Hearst. Yeah. This is him talking about a pimp who had beaten a woman so much and broke her down and convinced her that he had helped her cover up a murder that he had told her she committed, that she continued to work for him for months, even after she was supposed to not be working for him anymore. And she, it was a setup. There was no murder. Nothing actually happened. He just convinced her that that she had done something wrong and that he would fix it and she wouldn't get in trouble. And she was so grateful that he fixed it that she didn't even realize that he was the one that had put her in the position in the first place. And that's, I think, what you find in this country is that people will be so elated that things are different now that they don't realize that everything was terrible in the first place because of the things that were happening. I mean, you get like a thing like the tax code, or you get things like the Me Too movement. They don't change the things that led up to it in the first place, but they'll go after the individual cause of the problem to the point where they forget, how did we get here? And then they're like, well, whatever we have now is great because it's not what it was before. But it could be worse. It could be much worse. It's great that there's so many women running for office now. My town just swore in a female mayor, and there's only a handful of them in the first place in North Jersey, or at least in my county. But if that's only going to happen now, and then it's going to drop just like the black unemployment rate, it's nice, and then it spikes.
Slow down now.
During during a Republican administration. If people see coming into the midterms, okay, everything's fine. We don't need to unseat these Republicans in Congress. We don't need to complain about the president because everything's fine right now. And then right after the midterms, everything goes to hell. People used to say you could always tell when there was an election because gas prices would go down right before an election, and then they'd go back up because people go to voting booths with whatever they were angry about most recently.
Yeah, and honestly, and I think we should cap it off here. That is the one. That's like the most positive thing about this presidency. It's like they say like when the grass is cut, the snakes will show. Like you can see everything for what it is, and it is like you said. Having people sort of wake up and paying attention. Like they want to know what's in these laws. They want to go out and vote. They want to. But again, a lot of people are still voting out of anger. And I feel like when people voted for Obama, it wasn't out of anger. It was literally out of a sense of hope. Like we could move forward. And this is really like the dark and light side of the force or whatever. But
there has to be balance.
To your gas analogy about gas prices going down, I feel like this Trump administration is like they knew that, so their message is, we got the gas, you need the gas, fuck you. It's just that crass.
It's crazy.
But that's all I gotta say. I'm ready to wrap this thing up.
I just want to say one last thing too. Is most people in places like New Jersey and California, New York, they rush to prepay their taxes for the 2018 year because they could then write off the taxes they paid in 2017 towards the 2018.
I just hope they remember who did this to them.
That's the thing, though, because when they go to the voting booth in November, they're not going to see that their tax bill's up because they've already paid their taxes for 2018. But when they hit 2019 and 2020,
no, but they're going to know they had to run to do that. They know who did that.
You can only hope so because honestly, I think that.
But also, here's the problem with that: those are blue states anyway, where they're going to lose anyway.
Well, luckily, New York is saying that they're going to sue the federal government over the GOP tax plan because it is double taxation and it should be illegal. At least in certain respects. A lot of the tax plan will hold on its own, but that's something that we'll see and probably talk about in a later episode. But that's really all I wanted to say about that. I think that it sucks specifically for Democrats because there's going to be a lot of people who aren't feeling the sting of how stupid and weaponized the tax plan was. But they'll remember it in 2020, definitely.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, that's it. Why don't you tell them where they can find you in the future, sir?
They can find me in the future? I thought it was only available in the present.
Look, man. I don't know if you heard how fast those new Teslas go.
Yeah, I know. Well, in China, sent a proton up to space, teleported it. I guess you can find me...
Joseph S. Oswald.
Right down here.
On the tweets.
On the tweeters. On the Twitter sphere. Email, Twitter, come to the R Squared Network on YouTube. Subscribe, and also you might see a couple adverts popping up in your Facebook feed too for us. Go to the second page, Facebook page. That's Facebook/the2ndpg. There's going to be a website coming soon. We did just secure the rights to that domain name, so hopefully we'll have a nice website where we'll have a blog going, where you can watch past episodes.
Words to read.
Words to read. Considering whether to put it on a 6th grade level or not. I
You
can't really
should.
tell. But do feel free to tune in. Again, we wish Jay Martinez a nice speedy recovery from his illness. Hope his kids feel better. And hopefully nobody else gets caught in it. I believe it is about 6 degrees out right now.
Hey!
It's part of where I think my cough was coming from, too, because it seems to have subsided now that it's gotten warmer. But I appreciate everybody that did tune in to watch today. And if you're tuning in after the show is live, I sincerely appreciate you coming back and watching us, because I think it's important to hear what other people have to say. I was about to say normal people or regular people, just because I'm comparing us to things like, the major news sites and, the Breitbarts and the CNNs and whatnot. But I mean, it should be nice to see what your fellow Americans are saying and to participate in the conversation. If you've enjoyed the show, please feel free to message us. We'd love to have anybody on, as long as they're not coming just to troll.
No, I want the trolls too. Please come. We can play the dozens.
Just don't. No, he has a sword.
I do.
He doesn't want the trolls. He wants to slay the trolls. So thank you so much for everybody for tuning in. Steve, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me at Steve A.M. Johnson on your favorite social media network that is not Snapchat. Also, you can find me on our other show that we will be recording later today on The Real. That's where we give you all the latest in movie news and sometimes trivia, and we try to break things down a little bit, try to give you our take on that. So this week we are doing our directors draft picks, where we're all going to pick our top 5 directors, but there's no overlapping, so that should be fun. And we're going to talk about Jodie Foster thinking that comic book movies are ruining cinema.
Well, she just directed an episode of Black Mirror.
That's not a comic book movie, but
maybe that's what she thinks it should be.
Maybe. Yeah, that's all I got for you guys.
All right.
Thank you for watching, and we have a big 2018 plan for you. We got more shows coming. We want to
approximately 51 more episodes, if I'm give or take.
Yes.
So
maybe more. There may be some late night breaking news.
If there's some breaking news,
and we will go live in our boxers. That's the sort of thing you are into.
Luckily the cameras only show us from the nipples up, I guess. Can I say nipples on podcast?
You can, and I can stand up.
You can.
That's all I got for you. Right. So with that, I will say hugs, not drugs.
And I will not say anything, I guess.
Okay. Well,
Thanks for watching.
See you next week. Thank you.